New Zealand has long been seen as this sort of offshore billionaire's bunker, a place that you can go and get residence and work towards citizenship, a place that's comfortable for Westerners, and yet you can escape the apocalypse there. And yet New Zealand is expensive. It's hard to get in. The taxes aren't as good as you think. And I'm going to share with you one country that I believe is a better place to go than New Zealand. Outside of historical interest from China, I think some of the greatest interest in New Zealand comes from other English-speaking countries because New Zealand seems like a soft landing. I'm going to tell you about another English-speaking country that I think is even better. It's more affordable. It's more available to more people. I'm Mr.Henderson, the author of this now classic book called Nomad Capitalist. And before we get started, if you're interested in having someone help you put together a global, bespoke plan for reducing your taxes, getting residence and citizenship in backup countries, and protecting your assets, you can go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. Ireland is the country that I believe is a softer landing, easier to get into, and easier to maintain a lifestyle in than New Zealand. I'm even going to cover, for those of you who say, well, but New Zealand's so far away, how does that compare to Ireland? I'm going to go through a number of the key points why I think Ireland should be a place you consider above New Zealand. We're going to talk about the costs. We're going to talk about the costs of getting in, proximity and lifestyle, getting citizenship, the taxes, and safety. And so, to me, any English language speaking country, if you're from another English language country, is a soft landing. I always encourage people to look past the soft landing. I moved to Malaysia part-time many, many years ago. They speak English. I feel comfortable there. I think there's greater freedom there. The taxes are lower there for someone like me. But if you're not quite ready to make such a bold move and you want to stay in the Anglosphere, here's the first thing. Even after dramatically cutting the price of their so-called golden visa, their residence investment permit, it's still going to cost you about $3 million in investments to move to New Zealand. That's expensive. And what a lot of people, they're not sure if they're going to want to stay there. They're not sure if they're going to like it. And so that's a lot of money to invest, particularly in an English-speaking country like New Zealand, where they generally, the lower investment numbers generally require an investment that's harder to get out of. And so why I like Ireland over New Zealand, first things first, is it's accessible to far more people. If you're an entrepreneur, and you have some sort of critical skill on Ireland's list of critical skills, you can go and start a business, hire as few as one Irish citizen worker, hire yourself, pay yourself a salary as a critical skills holder, and you can have an Irish company in your global network of companies, or you can move your entire business to Ireland if you want. They certainly have a talented English-speaking workforce, not exactly the cheapest workforce. You can go to Ireland, and without really making any kind of investment, you can get a residence permit, and you and your family can move there much more easily than you ever would in New Zealand. What that does from a tax perspective is it isolates the work that you do in Ireland from your global structure. With Ireland's non-dom program, which we're going to talk about in a minute, you could move out of your high-tax country, you move to Ireland, you have your company somewhere offshore, whether it's the Cayman Islands or Hong Kong or anywhere in between, and you're going to isolate yourself and the work that you do in Ireland from that global structure. The more employees you have outside of Ireland, the lower your taxes in Ireland will be, and you can live a very tax-friendly lifestyle. But most importantly, it is affordable to get in. We'll come back to the taxes in a moment. Let's talk about proximity. I understand that what people like about New Zealand in some cases is it's far away. I've also talked to people who've lived in New Zealand, and they said, yeah, it's 11 hours to fly to Nomad Capitalist Live in Kuala Lumpur. That's our live event every year. Kuala Lumpur is located, in one of the busiest, most, densely populated parts of the world. You're 11 hours away from that, let alone, from the United States, let alone from Europe. I've talked to folks. I just couldn't deal with the isolation anymore. In fact, I met a client last year who had hired us 4 or 5 years ago. He had already had someone helping him move to New Zealand, but he had us doing the rest of the work. And I ran into him in Dublin, Ireland. He said, yeah, I moved here. And I think one of the reasons that I ascertained was Ireland was closer to everywhere else you wanted to be. It's 5 or 6 hours from the east coast of the U.S. It's just a couple of hours from anywhere you want to go in Europe. Obviously, it's a flight, not a train ride or a car ride, because it is an island, which I think offers, some of the benefits that New Zealand has. I mean, you're not just right there in some continental landmass. They do dictate their own immigration policy in Ireland. Different from the Schengen area of Europe. And so you have some of the benefits of New Zealand that way, but you're close to wherever you want to go. I mean, it doesn't really take much longer than 11 hours to fly from Ireland to Kuala Lumpur, but you've got so much obviously in between. Whereas in New Zealand, people are going to Vanuatu, they're going to Australia. I mean, there's just, if you're trying to have more freedom, you're not going to find it next door in Australia. For me, the proximity, the lifestyle, the services that are available there, because it is, in the heart of Europe, much better. You're going to have a better lifestyle living in Ireland. You're going to have more services available to you. You're going to have more places to go. And if you want the distance New Zealand offers as a plan B, buy a villa in Mauritius under their residence program. You can spend as little as the mid six figures, get a residence permit in Mauritius. That could lead to citizenship if you decide to spend more time there in the future. Spend your winter holidays there. Now you've got a second backup plan in your back pocket, and you've got a villa in a warm place. Mauritius in the Indian Ocean, far away from it all, same as New Zealand is, but you're going to pay less than 10% the price to get into Mauritius. So you put Ireland and Mauritius together, for example, you have a lot of the benefits of New Zealand. English speaking, it's on an island, highly developed place. You can work towards citizenship, tax favorability, but you have that, billionaire bunker thing at a fraction of the price. The whole thing together is going to cost you less than 15% what's going to cost you in New Zealand, give or take. You can get citizenship by investment in Vanuatu. That's not so far from New Zealand. I'm not saying you should live in Vanuatu. I'm not sure that your spouse is going to want to go and live in Vanuatu. It is tax-free. There's not as much going on there. It's still far away. It's still hard to get to. But if you want that backup plan for a low six-figure sum, you can get your family's citizenship in Vanuatu. And, maybe that's a place that it does have some reputational issues with the banks, for example. I wonder what reputational issues the Five Eyes countries are going to have, in the future, doing business around the world. So, maybe there's a push there. You can buy property in Uruguay and get residence there and work towards citizenship eventually. That's another great place, far away from it all, same as New Zealand. You can show income and get a residence permit in Paraguay or Uruguay, potentially work towards citizenship there in as little as 2 or 3 years. So for me, Mauritius or somewhere in southern South America, far more affordable, probably offers a lot of the benefits that New Zealand offers in terms of, agriculture, being able to grow your own food, great soils, all that stuff. Why go and live in New Zealand and pay $3 million US or more to live far away from it all if you can go and live in another English-speaking country, have a lot more services at a much lower entry point? You get your plan B somewhere else. This is one thing we talk to our clients about all the time, is if we can accomplish one goal by doing two different things at a much lower price, that's probably a better outcome, because not only do you have a plan A and a plan B now, rather than just one plan, but you also are going to save a lot more money. So sometimes, stacking multiple residence permits on top of each other or doing multiple things is actually better than trying to put put all your eggs in one basket. So if you want to work with us and get those kinds of insights, we have more options than pretty much anybody else in the business, because we have people all over the world. You go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. Let's continue with citizenship. Now, I would argue that Irish citizenship, in terms of places you can go, is arguably better than a New Zealand citizenship, because as a New Zealand citizen, you can live in New Zealand anytime you want, but you don't have to. Or you can live in Australia. Well, again, most of our clients are coming because they want more freedom and they want to pay less taxes, neither of which you're getting in Australia. Right? Now, in Europe, I understand Europe has its problems, and we have people on both sides of the fence. Some really want Europe, and some are just say, hey, Europe is falling apart. If Europe's falling apart, Australia's really falling apart, and New Zealand is in that orbit down there. So to me, what you get with an Irish passport is you can live and work in the United Kingdom, the only EU passport that can still do that. You can also live, work, study, do whatever you want in any of the other European countries. And so rather than having two countries, Australia and New Zealand, to choose from once you get their citizenship, now you've got about 30 countries to choose from. You want to go to live in Switzerland? You want to go to live in Spain? You want to go live in Portugal? You want to say, oh, hey, listen, Eastern Europe's where it's at. Okay, you want to go live in Romania? You just turn up, you register, and you can live there. Kind of like moving from California to Arizona or Ontario to British Columbia. I mean, you can have that freedom of movement. And so when there's 30 different countries that all have their own tax policies, that all have their own different approach to handle different situations, that to some extent even have their own different geopolitics, that means that you can move as the world moves. Right. So during COVID, people who lived in places that were more locked down, if you're an EU, you could have, gone early on and gone to Sweden. If taxes in your European country go up, you can move to any other European country, many of which now have tax incentives. And so the time to get citizenship is the same in both countries. It's about 5 years, and you're going to spend a year or two waiting to actually get your passport. And both countries do, interestingly enough, ask you to continue to live there, with certain exceptions to not. So it's not just get your passport and then never be there again. That is the challenge with both of those countries. But I would argue that the Irish passport is much easier to get. The time that you have to spend in country is probably a little bit more flexible in Ireland, although generally you're going to be spending the vast majority of your time in either one. But quite frankly, I think that most people that I've talked to enjoy spending time in Ireland. Part of it's psychology. Is knowing that, hey, if I wanted to go somewhere, I can get on a flight and be somewhere in as little as 30 minutes. I really think that the psychology is an aspect that's often overlooked in this offshore planning. People who are on, somewhere far away, I think they get cabin fever sometimes, and it causes them to want to go home too soon, not get the passports, not get the tax savings. Let's talk about the taxes. New Zealand has been heralded as having lower taxes than other English language countries. For example, no capital gains tax, but according to our own R&D team, that's a bit of a misnomer because certain things that would be considered capital gains elsewhere could be considered income in New Zealand. So the no capital gains tax sounds nice, but it's not as good as it sounds. Now, you do a 4-year tax holiday if you move to New Zealand where your work in the country, not tax exempt. So let's say I own a company and I work for my company in New Zealand. I'm going to pay New Zealand tax on that salary generally. This is not tax advice. I'm just giving you general things to think about. But if my business is offshore somewhere, again, Cayman Islands to Hong Kong, anywhere in between, I can pay nothing on that foreign income that's not being generated from New Zealand. So let's say all my other employees work somewhere else. I could pay a pretty low rate of tax on that business for the first 4 years. I've got to spend 5 years in New Zealand to qualify to apply for citizenship. So I'm going to be hit on that foreign company my 5th year. And then I'm going to probably spend about another 2 years there waiting to actually get my passport. And then again, they kind of want you to be there. You're not just supposed to jump ship immediately. So you get 4 years of tax friendliness. And after that, it's not going to be that tax friendly. Ireland, on the other hand, has a non-dom tax program, which means if you are considered a non-domiciled individual, there's a number of criteria, but simply speaking, if you're from somewhere else, if you had a background somewhere else, if you plan on dying somewhere else, that could very well make you a non-dom. Can you be a non-dom once you're an Irish citizen? The folks that we work think is if you meet certain criteria, yes, you can. It is not cut and dry, as in the case in Switzerland, for example. The bottom line is if you want to move to a country that's similar to yours, like in Ireland or New Zealand, the tax planning is going to be more involved. There's more things to think about. You need high-quality people helping you. What we have here is a network of experts, likely in the country that you're leaving, to help you safely and legally get out of that country and its tax net and move all your stuff that needs to be moved, set up banking somewhere else. I don't think I'd be moving all my money to Ireland or New Zealand, quite frankly. So you're going to want banking in some other banking capital. You want to get set up with your residence permit. It's not as straightforward in these countries. And you want to get your taxes right once you get there. We have the experts and we have the know-how that help people do that all under one roof. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We ask for you to have $1 million or more in liquid assets, or if you're just starting out, you need to make $500,000 a year. Our most successful clients have between $5 and $100 million net worth. That's the sweet spot. And, this stuff can be expensive. It's not as simple as going and getting a residence permit in Mexico for a few $1,000s. I've been through a number of these processes myself. It seems a lot easier going in than it actually ends up being. So go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. Let's talk last about safety, by the way. I was surprised. Both Ireland and New Zealand, by some metrics, are in the top 10, top 15 of safe countries. And we've seen that. For example, the Global Peace Index, they both score very highly. I looked at the latest numbers from Numbeo on just raw crime statistics. They're right bang average, right there with the United States and Australia. The Western countries are not as safe as you think. So from kind of the total, look of, is it a peaceful country? Ireland and New Zealand, right up there at the top. If you look at crime stats, they are not as strong as a UAE, for example. They're not as strong as a Singapore or an Andorra. And so I think you can live a very safe life in either of these if you're the kind of person that we would be helping. I wouldn't be worried about that at all. But from a safety point of view, different metrics, they're pretty similar, whether they're the top or whether they're in the middle of the pack. What's interesting about Ireland is geopolitically it's been pretty neutral. Actually is more pro-Palestine, which is a departure from many countries in the West. They're not part of things like Five Eyes and NATO. And so they've historically kind of, kept to themselves, which I think is a benefit somewhat above New Zealand as well. So that's why I think Ireland's better than New Zealand. If you're looking for that type of country, that's something you might want to consider. And if you go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, we'd be happy to talk you through all the options.